Let's get started. Hello everyone, and welcome to Understandable English, or if you are Russian, then добро пожаловать на мой канал. Today I'm going to continue this travel series that I've started. It's a series where I try to have more informal talks with you guys and tell about my travels around the world, and so that you can learn about the world and also about English at the same time. I've made some other episodes about Chechnya, about Armenia, and about some other places in Russia like Kamchatka or Novy Urengoy. So if you're interested, you can check those videos out too. Today, we're going to talk about another more remote place in Siberia and also an island that is in the sea. These places are Yakutia and Sakhalin. But you might ask me what attracted me to go to Yakutia. It's a relatively famous place, especially if you've been in this area of the world. You often hear people talk about Yakutia, but there is not a lot of infrastructure, especially tourism infrastructure there. So I was curious to see what is there, what can I get to, what can I see? So I found this opportunity to go to a place that was not very well documented. If we look at official documents, it seems that people only visited this officially 2 years ago. I'm sure other people have walked, but to actually have explored it, it was only 2 years ago. It was interesting, once we were actually there were some local people who lived in a village nearby, but they had never been across that side of the mountain. They said, we don't really hunt there, there's nothing there to eat, so we don't go there. There's no point in going there. Only tourists really go there. Another thing that attracted me to this opportunity was the fact that it was so very remote. I've been to a few places around the world that are quite remote, but never this far. It was about 32 hours by car along a long gravelly road through rivers without bridges, a very difficult road. And then from there we had to take a small motorboat for 6 hours up the river. There are no roads or ways to get to this place that we were going. The only way to get there in the summer is by boat, or in the winter you can try to drive along the frozen river, but I don't know if I'd really want to do that. And when we got there, it was completely, absolutely untouched. It wasn't like Kamchatka, where I mentioned there were very few people, but there were just no people, no trails, no evidence that anyone had ever been there. And the only way I knew that people had been there was the guide, or the main guy who was taking our group, had been there the year before. But there was no sign of people, no trails, there was nothing. We arrived by boat to our launch point at around midnight. But if you know about the northern parts of the world, of course in the summertime, the sun just does not go down. The sun does not set. There are polar days. And so it was very strange to me. As I arrived, I was thinking, what time is it? And I looked at my watch and I was like, wow, it's midnight, but the sun is still shining. It doesn't feel like midnight. It doesn't feel like I want to sleep. So we pitched our tents and slept for the night and tried to gather a little bit of strength before we started our trek the next day. In the valleys, it was quite luscious green, a lot of plants and very interesting moss growing, but nothing too big. No trees that were big, no bushes that were big, simply because the growing season is very short. Up that far north in the world, everywhere in the world that far north, nothing really grows too big because the growing season is so short. But as we continued further up the mountains, everything turned to a gray color. There wasn't a lot of color at all. And for me, that was a little bit interesting because typically in the mountains, you still have some color, at least various rock colors or some plants growing on the rocks. And so it gives you a little bit more of a beautiful view. But here, you got to a certain point and it seemed that the world just turned to black and white. There was not much color at all. And in general, the hiking was a bit perilous. It was scary. There were steep edges and loose rocks, rocks that would teeter up and down. It was not just a physical test, but also a mental test, because you always had to be thinking where to put your next leg, where to put your next hand. And so it was a difficult, both physically and mentally, hike to be on. But even though there was a lack of color, there were still many beautiful moments. And so I can't say that I was completely bored by the scenery. There were some of these crazy baths that we could take. It was, of course, ice cold. And there were also just these beautiful, I would call them forever sunsets, where the sun pretends that it's going to go down, the sun pretends that it's going to set, but because we're in the north, we have our polar days, and it just sits there in the sky at night and gives you this orange, yellow, beautiful color. So I would say during the evenings and the nights might have been the most beautiful times at this point. In terms of wildlife, we did not see too much. The mosquitoes were definitely not as bad as Kamchatka. We didn't see any bears, but we saw a lot of evidence of them. There were different droppings, as we say, and different footprints we could see, but we didn't actually see any bears or any sort of animals in the wild. As we came back down from the mountains, our final goal was a small village on the other side of the river. So as we got there, we had to take a big stick and hit an old rusty metal barrel, and this sound would be heard in the village, and they knew to expect us. So once they heard this sound, they would come across with a boat and bring us to the village. Now, this village was quite interesting because typically in history, this is not how the Yakut people used to live, but it's an effect of Sovietization of the Soviet Union, bringing people to live in a more Soviet style, and they started to work together on their farms and to try to contribute to the Soviet society. But it didn't always work as well as it could have. Now, this hike for me was quite interesting because of its remoteness, but I'm not really sure that I would recommend this hike to anyone who is looking for an easy and beautiful thing to see. If you're looking for something that's challenging and that's very different than your everyday hiking, then this is the way to go. But I wouldn't recommend this for anyone who is just looking to relax in nature. But after that, we continued on our boat 6 hours and then 32 hours by car back to the main city, Yakutsk. And this city was interesting. In the summertime, it was quite overgrown and worn down, but I think that's because this city was meant for the winter. There's not a lot of summer time, and so for that reason, they don't do a lot to support the city for the summer. It was also interesting to see that all these buildings were built on stilts, or they were built off the ground. And this is because of the permafrost that exists in this region. If you build a building on the ground, it will melt the permafrost and the building will start to sink and fall. So in order to go into any building, you had to go up some stairs, which was quite interesting. But that really concludes my adventure in Yakutia, and let's continue to talk about part 2, which is Sakhalin. So I think it's good to emphasize that when hiking or trekking in places in nature, it's interesting to see the differences. You can see the very difficult and demanding, challenging hikes like I did in Yakutia, or you can take a much more relaxing variant where you're singing with people around a fire or making delicious food, swimming in the ocean, and taking your time to enjoy the nature as well. Well, that's it for this episode. I hope you learned something new. If you learned something new, feel free to like and subscribe, and I'll be happy to share some more content with you in the future. As always, have a wonderful day. Toodles.